Apologies, absolutely everybody who's sat there waiting for us to go live. Sam, thank you so much for joining us and for your
Thank you,
patience
Sam.
while I figure out what the hell was just going on.
Absolutely fine.
How are you anyway? How have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Well, has anybody really been good in the last 12 months? I've been not, I've managed. I'm alive still. I've made it through. I think that's about all any of us can hope for, the way the world's been in the last 12 months. We're all still here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's been a very strange period, very a lot of uncertainty and just,
I feel
not
like
confident about things.
Some of that we were just talking about before, wasn't it, Sam, about how people have adapted to what they've had to do has been, in my eyes, has been quite a really positive thing. I know it's the circumstances to why people have had to adapt is really shitty, but the fact people have, I think, is quite an endearing thing.
Yeah, I always think about how difficult it would have been if the pandemic had hit 15 years ago, when we didn't have the software and the internet capabilities to do all of these things that we're doing, like the live streaming and the podcasts and everything else. Like it would have been an absolute nightmare. That's one thing. One silver lining is that it wasn't 15 years ago, and we do have the capabilities to do these things.
Yeah, it would have been really, really dark if, like, you weren't able to, do a video call with your family members, or like you said, like continuing on a brand online, like Le Pub, doing podcasts and things in ways you wouldn't have normally thought about it, like Rich and I are doing now.
Imagine if we'd all just had to sit and read books. That would have been absolutely terrible.
Oh, brilliant. Maybe we'd all have just come out of it really educated, tolerant, lovely people, because we'd actually spent time reading and learning things instead of just arguing on the internet.
Yeah, we've done it all wrong. We'll start again. We'll have another one. We'll start again. We'll do it properly.
Yeah, I take it back.
Yeah, let's go for the Great Reset, as the conspiracy theorists like to call it.
Yeah, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Obviously, it's a pleasure for us to have you. And, it's a dark Monday evening. So thank you for letting us have your time with that and everything.
No problem.
Yeah, like obviously, let's get into it really.
Okay.
How has sort of the last 12 months been when it comes to, let's talk positive stuff, live streams, Music Venue Trust, working with all that? How's that sort of been for you? Sort of delve deep for us, go into it for us there.
I think Music Venue Trust, I genuinely, I know I work for them, but I've been saying this for the last 5 years. Without Music Venue Trust, I think 80% of music venues wouldn't exist in the UK right now, because the work they do around legislation such as agent of change and planning law and things like that is vital. But what is even more vital is that, like, I'm just going to lay it out there, music venues don't make money. We do not make money. All of us are living month to month and praying to God we can make the next month's bills. But I think everyone is so good at marketing and hiding these things that pre-Music Venue Trust, I used to sit in the old Le Pub and look at places like the Joiners and things like that and think, what am I doing wrong? Why is it so difficult for me? And then Music Venue Trust put us all into one like little group, and we go to Venues Day in London, well, pre-COVID obviously. And, people sit there and they talk honestly about the fact that they're struggling too. And not only does that give you a huge sense of solidarity that, oh my God, no, it's not just me, this is a really hard industry, but it also gives you a base to think, right, why is this so difficult? And what can we do to fix it? And I think like the solidarity is the main thing that Music Venue Trust provided. And that has never, ever been more evident than through this crisis, because we've all come together and we've managed to get so much funding for grassroots music venues, and 90% of venues that have been funded this year have never been able to access public funding before. And those forms are not fun. They're difficult. Arts Council love to say that they're not there to trip you up, but they are. Of course they are.
I don't want to just give money away. Come on.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
But like the work Music Venue Trust done, just being around, just helping venues access funding so that we're all still going to be here, at the end of this crisis, is unbelievable. Like the crowdfunding was amazing and the solidarity from that was amazing. But for me, the most impressive thing they've done is the millions and millions of pounds they've managed to get out of the government into the grassroots circuit. It's unbelievable.
Cash is king.
Cash is king.
Yeah. Especially when most venues are owned by private landlords who have charged them 100% rent, such as ours. If we hadn't had funding, we'd have been booted out by now, because our landlord, I guess, why should he take a hit? He has a tenant, but we've been paying 100% rent through the crisis, and without funding, we wouldn't have had the money. We'd have been gone. And cash is king.
Yeah.
I think you should get that tattooed on you, Ethan, because it comes up a lot more often in your life than I'd like to admit.
Just like on the collarbone.
Yeah.
In nice, lovely script that you got across.
Yeah.
How were the live streams and everything? How did that sort of come around? I know, again, it might be because they kind of had to in a way, but what was the sort of discussions with the bands and the people who got involved?
We actually got Arts Council funding back in June, and part of that funding was to put on 5 live events. And then obviously the second lockdown hit, and we didn't have the option to do them live, so we had to go back to Arts Council and ask to repurpose them for streaming events. And then we realized that actually streaming is really, really fun, so we just kept doing it. It wasn't something we really considered until we thought, right, we have to find a way to engage our community. It's important to our funding, but it's also important to us as an organization to stay engaged with our community and to give people something to look forward to in lockdown. And then I think, we just decided to just keep running with them because we had so much fun.
Would it be something that you think you'd carry on once the pub's able to be open again? Just
I don't know.
Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon type.
I have huge mixed feelings about that, because I think you're never going to recreate a gig, for one.
Yeah.
I love the way that live streaming is accessible to people who maybe they're too ill to come to a gig, maybe they can't afford to come to a gig. Although I always say, if you genuinely can't afford to come to a gig you 100% want to come to, just drop me a message. If you're 100% broke and your favorite band are playing, don't miss it. Drop me a message.
You're a lot nicer than me.
Yeah, we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, we can't afford that.
It's fine. I make my money on the bar, not the door. I'm fine.
Yeah, we need to start selling cans.
I have done that for somebody who then dropped 30 quid on the bar, and I was like, you cheeky, you had enough money for 10 pints, but you wouldn't pay the 4 quid entry.
That's incredible.
Yeah, no, I think there's a danger of dividing the audience so that both the gigs and the live streams are half-hearted attempts, because people might think, I can't be asked to go to the gig, I'll just stay at home and watch. So therefore your gig isn't as busy, so your atmosphere is lacking. But there are people at the gig, so your live stream's not getting as many hits. So that's not having the impact it should. So I'm really, really mixed feeling about live streams after we're open. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a very comprehensive answer. I like that.
Yeah.
The answer is I don't know.
I've thought about it a lot.
I'm still thrown by your comment about this person. You saying, "Oh, come down and I'll sort you out." Really, really nice thing to do. And then I just imagine like 3 tenors at the bar, woo.
Yeah. I was just stood there, and he turned to me and he was like, "Can I get a pint of Camden, Sam?" And I was like, "Yeah, no worries."
Yeah.
And then half an hour later, he was like, "Oh, another pint, Sam." And I was like,
That's more than the entry.
Yeah, the longer it went on, the more I was like, "You twat, you just didn't want to give me 4 quid because it'd mean you could have 1 less pint." But yeah.
Well, but you've got to shoot your shot, I think, is what people would say.
Yeah.
Talking about shows then, we did ask you this beforehand and you said it was going to be incredibly hard to do, but let's talk about some of your favorite shows, as many of your favorite shows as you'd like to sort of go into. Let's have a nice little reminisce about the good old days, if you will.
I don't think you can do a roundup of favorite shows without mentioning Pure Love. That was one of the best things I've ever seen in a building, let alone my own building. It was phenomenal. I remember a couple of weeks before the gig, Pure Love were in town supporting Lost Profits. We won't go into that. And they did a photo shoot in the pub. And I took Frank upstairs to see the venue, and he just took one look at the rafters and went, "This is going to be fucking fun." And he rode the crowd in a dinghy that he carried onto the rafters and dived off the rafter onto the crowd holding a dinghy. And, they carried the drum kit. The crowd carried the drum kit from the stage to the back of the room and set it up, and they played drums at the back and then carried it back. And, and it's just phenomenal. But I think they were a phenomenal band because I saw them in the Croft the next day. And the guitarist actually crowd walked to the back of the room, because in the Croft there was this ledge above the door that you went in.
I've played there a couple of times.
So he crowd walked over to that ledge while playing My Sharona. And I was just stood there like, these guys are insane. I think in terms of just like standing back and thinking, what the fuck is this? Love is like one of my favorites.
Is that one of those times where you sat watching something and this is cool, but in the back end you're going, I hope my insurance covers a man jumping out of the rafters in a dinghy?
That's Trash Talk. Every time Trash Talk played, God. I was just sat crying thinking, the insurance doesn't cover this. There was no does it. It just wasn't. I remember,
doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, again,
do they
with
cover
the rafters,
they cover stuff if they break stuff? Don't they, bands like Trash Talk? I know I've heard like mental like shows that they do, but they might be ridiculous on stage, but off stage they go, right, this is what's going to happen, and we've got a whole van full of microphone stands and stuff like that, just in case. Like,
nice. I think with Trash Talk, again, like the rafters, you're not supposed to climb in the rafters. They're not for climbing in, you know, they're 8 foot in the air.
The building up.
Yeah, they keep the building up. And obviously, like, they're not as health and safety conscious, you know, and Lee from Trash Talk got up in the rafters. And I saw that he'd obviously caught his hand on like a screw or something, and he was dripping blood. And he would not let me near him till after the set. And I went up to him and I was like, give me your fucking hand. Let me wrap that up. And he just pointed at his leg that had a massive piece of glass hanging out and went, like, you sort that one out first. And I was like, I'm definitely not covered for this. Like, this is not something that I could, you know, if environmental health walked into that pub then, woof, gone, shut down. Yeah. In the words of Skepta, shut down. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, those two bands, like the energy around what they did was amazing. And then I think there's a band from Oregon called Larry and His Flask that I am completely in love with. And they played their first UK show in La Pub. And like, we'd seen the videos and it's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like bluegrass punk. And they got stuck. Well, their driver got stuck. So they spent the entire day at Heathrow and they didn't turn up at La Pub until 5 to 10. And they were due on stage at 10. And they walked in with a double bass, a brass section, a banjo, 2 acoustics, an electric, a stand-in drummer. And I just was like, this isn't going to happen. And then by 10:05, they were playing, and it was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. And that's like one of those times when you think, yeah, this is good. We kind of know what we're doing here.
That's incredible. I could just imagine this guy like just bleeding, blasting his leg.
Yeah.
That's rock and roll.
That same night,
that is punk rock. Yeah.
That same night, I got asked like about 1 a.m. They were like, "Oh, Sam, we're really hungry. Can you get some food?" And I was, "Of course I can." So I had to go to the drive-through McDonald's and order 18 cheeseburgers. That was what they wanted. And I pulled up and I was like, 18 cheeseburgers, please. And the guy was like, "You're gonna have to wait a while. We haven't got any cooked." And I was like, "Okay, I don't really have a choice." Yeah, 18 cheeseburgers.
Nice. Speaking of like reminiscing, like stuff like that, I guess, and I was wondering if we could talk maybe a little bit about the old Le Pub and you know, so that the transition and everything that went along with that to the new one now.
Yeah.
So where do you start with that? I think is also
yeah. I think we moved because our landlady, she wanted to sell, and I persuaded her to give me a lease instead of selling. And then at the end of that 5-year lease, she was like, it's been nice, it's been lovely, but I am retiring. I am sad. She had like 3 pubs. She was like, I'm selling. I want to take my money out of my businesses and I want to retire. And we looked at buying that building from her. And she said, I'm going to give you 3 months first refusal here. I'm not even going to put it on the market until you've had 3 months. She was amazing. She was really, really supportive. And I started speaking to a financial advisor and he said to me, okay, why La Pub? And I was like, oh my God, because of this gig and this history and this and this and this. And he was like, yeah, but the bank are not going to give you money based on an emotional attachment. You need to tell me, is that pub in the right part of town to attract business? Does that pub have disability access? Does that pub have the ability to expand? And the answer to all of those questions was no. And that's when I started thinking, okay, so we need to take what we do and move it to somewhere that does. And it was terrifying doing it. Absolutely. I genuinely, the first 2-3 weeks we were open, I was just walking around like, is it the same? Does it feel the same? Is everything okay? And then I think the only time I finally twigged that it was we moved in here and opened in the August. And that Christmas, I looked around and there were just like every regular from the old pub, all singing Christmas songs and hugging and buying each other drinks. And I was like, yeah, it's worked. Nice. It's okay. It wasn't the building. It was what we do. Yeah. And that was a really terrifying transition time of every time we'd have a good time, I'd think, yeah, but was that it? Was that a fluke? And it's really difficult, but we did it.
I was having a conversation with Connor Couples a couple of days back about the new Le Pub and how we think like, if you were to design a music venue in your head, it's perfect. It's completely accessible, which is which is incredible, not just now, but is incredibly important, full stop.
Yeah.
And you want a bar that you can access very, very easily from the gig room and a gig room next door. And the gig room is the perfect size for at least like the style of music that me and Ethan would sort of be going to is absolutely perfect. So you've smashed it basically.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And during lockdown, we've actually built a recording studio in the basement.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, we're slowly getting there. We put the plans in last week to expand upstairs to a roof terrace and multi-use performance space as well.
Wow.
So
we're sick.
Yeah, roof terrace is going to be amazing. Like a roof terrace that's not for chavs in Newport. What? Yeah, it's going to be really, really cool. I'm really excited for that. So yeah,
you need one of those like when a roof terrace has like a clear floor you can like see down.
No, those things make me feel so sick. I once went on a glass bottom boat and threw up everywhere.
For no reason.
I would not be able to work on there. I'd be like, no, sorry guys, you're gonna have to collect all of the glasses. I'm not going out there.
Glass floors and pints don't mix. Ethan, don't ever become an architectural designer, mate.
Okay, fine.
terrible idea. No, that sounds fantastic. So is the idea then basically the new La Pub in your head? It's like Lego. You can just what you can think of, you can then try and expand on because
we've got 3 derelict floors. We've got 3 derelict floors upstairs, and I mean they are derelict. They're only accessible by a ladder. They only have like joists. They don't even have floorboards in half of it and things like that. But it's ours, and we can expand into it. And every time we have an idea, we can think, yes, okay, let's get the plans in for that. Because we're still working our way around things. Like one of the issues is fire escapes. It doesn't matter how much floor space we've got due to fire escapes. We really can't increase the amount of people in the building by that much. So the higher up the building we go, the more we need to look at different uses. So we're thinking maybe long-term studio for artists to rent, because then there's only 2 or 3 of them on the top floor, but that gets use out of the top floor, and it also creates income for the business without impacting on the capacity for the other floors and things like that. So nothing is set in stone. We're still working it all out, but yeah, it's looking really, really good.
That's great.
Nice.
Was it like a sad emotional time moving from the old one into the new one? Was there like a transitional time where you're walking around the new one going, I miss the old La Pub, or was it like you felt like home?
It's really weird. Like when we realized we weren't going to buy that building, I genuinely had a chat with my husband, and I was like, look, the night that we close and I have to lock that door, like genuinely, you may have to carry me home. I can't imagine how much this is going to hurt. But I don't know if it still hasn't hit, or if the new pub is just so good it doesn't matter, because I genuinely don't miss it. I really don't. Like I miss it in terms of like it was a lovely space, and we drove past the other day and we laughed about the fact that you couldn't even tell it was a pub, and that was part of the beauty of it. Was like your mate would say, let's go in here, and you'd be like, what, this doorway? And then suddenly it was a pub. And that's that was one of my favorite things about it, was that it was hilarious to watch people's face as they walk through a doorway down some stairs into an amazing bar. But yeah, I dream about it a lot. It's in my dreams a lot. Like I dream I'm there and I'm trying to get people out because we've moved and they don't understand that we've moved. That's like a recurring dream that I've had for the last 3 years. But no, I don't think I miss it.
The new space is great. It's
people really say like, oh, I prefer the older pub. Generally people like in their like late 40s. And I'm like, well, you're stupid then, because you're young.
Don't ever get attached to things, kids, basically.
Yeah.
So what are the plans then, if we're talking gigs, for example, for the new La Pub? What's on the, is there anything on the cards for starters? I know it's hard to judge things, but looking forward to next year. Are you basically just wanting to get 7 days a week, live music, and make it
100%.
ridiculous?
100%. And I don't know if this is just me, but I've also got this personal thing where I really want to kind of create a pathway to grassroots theatre. Because I think I grew up in an area where if you went to the theatre, you were a snob and you got beaten up. And I think that like there is so much amazing stuff coming out of like spoken word and theatre that I really want to do 1 or 2 days a week of just accessible theatre in terms of like it's free or it's really, really cheap. And you don't have to go into a theatre and get judged by a snooty box office person because you don't happen to have the right, like really expensive shirt and trousers on. I really want to like kind of bring that DIY punk ethos into theatre as well, because I think there's so much amazing stuff coming out of theatre at the moment. So that's my personal thing.
There's a lot of stuff going back to like me asking about the live streams, if you're thinking of doing them. a lot of those sort of things you can film there. If someone wants to do a comedy gig or something like that,
Yeah.
it's a lot less hassle than recording a live music full band and everything. So I guess like that could lead into, you already know how to do it, and then you could either get the artist's revenue from that, saying something, you could burn your first ever DVD live at the pub, or you can have it all for your own YouTube channel and things like that. So basically the possibilities are almost endless with that.
Yeah, that's my thing at the moment.
It's tough knowing what's the right thing to do at the moment as well, isn't it? Because I know for Rich and I, we've had a few people send us emails inquiring, do you fancy booking us XYZ? And it's still like, oh, I'm not sure what to commit to. So it's quite interesting that you're just like, I'm not, maybe live music won't be back. Let's do some theatre. That's quite cool.
I can chuck one person on a stage way easier than I can chuck five. Because I think with social distancing, the venue capacity is, I think it was 17, which once you've got 3 bands and a sound engineer,
that's it.
There's 2 customers if you're lucky. Whereas if you've just got someone delivering an amazing, like, passionate monologue, you've got 36 people you can sell tickets to. So I think, it's all about adapting and expanding. And
I did a really interesting, also me and Ethan did a really interesting show at the Pipes Brewery in Pontcanna for the Brech I Hear single launch. To open that, we had Welsh language spoken word, which to me, like, I mean, apart from listening to the Welsh language, it was beautiful. I had no idea what he was saying, but the amount of people who were like,
could have been saying Rich is a cunt over and over
basically
again.
the entire time. I wouldn't have blamed him either, but like that was like something that when I saw that, I go, oh, actually a lot of that stuff does fit in with what, like, me and Ethan and what you do and what other promoters do, because it's performance art, it's performance full stop at the end of the day.
There's a certain element of theatre that's coming out stronger and stronger at the moment that really does fit in with punk bands. And I think Matt Jarrett used to do a night in Cardiff called Balloon, and it was literature and punk bands, and it was amazing. And it was, it was really like, this is fucking brilliant. They're doing readings from authors in between punk bands, and it's just so good and so clever.
That's good.
The best email I've had, go on, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The best email I've had in the last few weeks asked me if as a pub had I ever considered putting on live music, and if I wanted to after the pandemic, they were more than happy to help. And I literally replied with, no, never considered it, and then just blocked them, because you have no idea who you're emailing, do you? What? It was really weird.
You've got to admire the naivety of
email, or what?
I don't know. I think they just emailed every pub in the area, like a blanket email. But I was just like, what?
Just Google like
a little bit of research.
Newport places that have an alcohol license.
The pub, that means the pub, right? That must be a pub. Like,
it was so weird. I was just like, no, never, go away.
No, never.
Me and Ethan have been getting a lot of bands or agents from over in Europe asking us to put shows on over here, which we'd never really had before, unless we approached a couple of them, which I thought was really strange, because Europe is, we discussed earlier on before we started going live 20 minutes later than I probably should have done, but about that gig in Barcelona, where we said they basically just threw caution to the wind, gave everyone tests and then masks and stuff. They seem to be going balls to the wall. I say Europe seem to go balls to the wall to try and get things back to normal, for whatever normal is to people. I remember you saying it was a lot harder when you were sat thinking about it than just giving people
logistically it's I don't know at what point you class somebody who's tested negative, who's been stood next to somebody who's tested positive. How what is the risk there? Because they've just been stood next to each other. What's the point in sending one home and letting one in if they've just been stood next to each other in a queue waiting to get tested? And
because you could lose 30 people for a show for that. You had to send a whole group of people home because of it.
If one tests positive, but they've been in the same testing. It's something we looked at a lot with Music Venue Trust, and we just threw a load of ideas around and then just thought, this is just logistically, we don't know how to make this work. And it's very strange. I mean, I think now the cases are a lot lower, it would work a lot better, using either vaccination passports or quick result tests. Now I think is possible, but at the time that we were discussing it, this was like the height of the first wave, when we naively thought it was going to be over in another 3 months, which I think we all did. I mean, the guy in the pub up the road told me when we were locking down on that Friday in March, I was taking all the valuables out of the pub, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing? We're going to be open in 3 weeks."
You were like,
and I was like, "Yeah, just because Boris says we're going to be open in 3 weeks, mate. You know, the entire of Europe and China has been on lockdown for 4 months. We are not going to be open in 3 weeks." But even though like I thought he was being too optimistic, even my like pessimistic view was 6 months. And the fact that we're now a year down the line and still have no date for a return to live music is just absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I had a pound bet with one of my old colleagues that we would be back in the office. He said we'd be back in the office by June last year. We went out of the office at the beginning of March, end of March, that sort of time. I still haven't had that pound yet back from him, but it's been a wild ride since then.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally can't wait to be able to say yes to someone for a show. Like, it's a little bit different for me and Ethan than it is for you, because I suppose you have your venue. You're always in touch with what's going on. You can choose to open when they say you can open and all that. Whereas me and Ethan will have to then go out and try and find a venue that we can host a band that's one to come from there. But I can't wait for it. I can't wait for that first day where me and Ethan both nod at each other and go, "Yes, we can do a show."
Yeah. I mean, I'm really glad that I didn't know a year ago that it would be over a year, because I don't think I would have mentally coped. If you'd said to me last March, you know, you're going to be sat here next March with still no idea when gigs are coming back, I think it would have been a lot harder to get through the pandemic. So not knowing is, in a way, is better. But then it's also been this wild ride of, oh, you're opening in July. Oh, you're closing in November. Oh, you're open again. Oh, the fire break didn't work. You're closed. Oh, you're not closed, but you can't sell alcohol. What are you on? Just shut up.
That was wild.
That was the weirdest thing. That was so weird, because we actually got a non-alcoholic beer on tap for that weekend.
Oh, is it coming back?
Hopefully.
I think we might lost her.
Oh no. Oh dear.
Sam, are you still there? We'll get her back. But in the meantime, I mean, we can probably sort of guess what you're going to say. Having a non-alcoholic. Oh, there you go. We're back. You're back.
Oh yeah, I disappeared, but I could still hear you guys, which was really strange. But no, we had this craft fair. So we had this craft fair, and I had to get in touch with the police and say, look, people will be drinking pints, but they're non-alcoholic, and you can come and look in my cellar and check. And that's the weirdest thing I've ever had to send in my life. Hi, Mr. Policeman, I'm only selling non-alcoholic beer, I promise. What world are we living in?
Yeah.
The place I was working, I mentioned to you before, where I'd spend all my time pulling pints and changing beers and making cocktails and things. And then the second that non-alcoholic thing came into work the next day, much to my dismay. And there was a coffee machine on the side of the bar, and I went, "You're a barista now." And I was like, fuck this. Like, I can't even, like, I'll happily, I love coffee. I love making coffee. I don't want to make coffee for everyone else though, but I couldn't even like put a shot of whiskey or a bit of Baileys in it and make it a nice Christmassy sort of thing. It was, no, here's some filter coffee that I've had to make for you. And if you want some non-alcoholic IKEA Glühwein, be my guest. Like,
I mean, we had a chat with licensing. When we had a chat with licensing, I was like, what if I want to drink? What if when I close my pub, I want to sit at my bar and pour myself a whiskey that it belongs to me already? And they were like, no, you're drinking on a licensed premises. And I was like, but it's a licensed premises that's closed. Doesn't matter. And I was like, so I genuinely can't even come in, do a little DIY, and then have a can of beer. It's just really strange. But there we are.
It's like a service flask or something. It's like prohibition all over again.
Not
that any of us were alive for prohibition.
You want to elbow the bar and an ex-secret bar sticks out the side.
Bloody coffee cup full of Jack Daniels. I get kind of why
they did it. Sam, why are you asleep at the bar? Leave me alone.
Big caustic coffee cup full of booze.
Why they did it was, you gotta have. I hope you appreciate this. I guess they did it because you've got to have one rule for everyone, because then it makes it even harder to like judge who's breaking a rule if this venue hasn't been given this license and this and that. Not to say that the shut it down completely was the right thing to do, but I guess
that's the one thing that really bothered me. The one thing I really wanted from the council and from the police was to come down harder on the venues that were doing it wrong. Because myself, McCann's up the road, another music venue, you know, we had the same amount of council inspections, which was roughly fortnightly, and we were fine. But then there were other venues that were like caught having secret parties in their VIP rooms that were rammed, and they got improvement notices. Shut them down. because of them and the way they behaved, we all got shut down, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
You know, and one place was given a 3-month closure notice at the beginning of lockdown, and now lockdown's going to be over at the same time as their closure notice ends. So they've had zero punishment for the fact that they opened and sold alcohol during lockdown in December. And it's like, what is the sense in that? What is the punishment in that? And that really bothers me, because it was hard work, and I did not like telling people they weren't allowed to hug their friends, and I hated telling people to sit down. You know, it's not why I got into running a pub, to sit down, you can't sit on that table, you came in with that table. Yeah, but I did it to keep people safe, and then the people that didn't bother, they made a fucking fortune while everybody else is struggling, and then faced barely any consequences. And that is one thing that really wound me up. There should have been stronger consequences for people that just didn't care.
Do you think, though, the community around Le Pub, the people that like you said, all the regulars that used to go to the old Le Pub, then they'd turn up on their first day, those people will come back day one?
Oh, I mean, 100%. I get
it. And more so, I reckon.
Yeah, I get 2 messages a day from people I know saying, can I book for the 22nd of April? And I'm like, well, no, because we haven't officially had the go-ahead for that date. No, I'm not going to take money off you now to book a table. You know, people are desperate to come back. People just want to see each other.
Yeah. That's the thing. I feel like I'm not going to know how to socialize with people. I've done, like I said to you earlier, I speak to Zach Mather and Connor Couples and everybody like on nightly. But when I meet up with people, like if I just go and have like a social distance coffee with them, I don't know what to do. And it might just be because I've spoken to them every single night and have nothing new to say. But like, it's strange, because normally you'd go up to someone, you'd give them a big, massive hug. Yeah. And like, you know, you
it's
wouldn't mind like standing right next to them.
I am a massive hugger, and the hugging bothers me. Like, I think there was one night in the summer where I hadn't seen my friends Nyla and Tab for months, and they were out, and we run at each other. We're borderline those really annoying girls that scream and hug even though we saw each other 3 days ago. And I couldn't, and it really, I was like, this is actually hurting my heart to just have to say, hello, please take a seat.
Did you see that guy who designed that hugging like fence in his back garden so he could hug his nan, and he basically got, you know, those big rubber gloves and everything that you see people in, like, and he had in his fence, he put a big perspex wall with these gloves in it so that he could hug his nan on the other side of it. And it's like one of those.
God, that's broke my heart. Yeah,
you know, one of those like news stories, and then you see at the end, like, it's like nuclear war's happening, everyone's starving to death, but this man hugged his gran through a fence, and you're like, oh, nice. Like, it was one of those. Adapting again. That's what we're all doing.
I also think, in a way, the internet makes it better and worse, because you can stay in touch with your friends, and that's really cool. But then you kind of miss those friends, because if I take a few days off Facebook, I almost get to the point where I'm just existing, and then I'll go back on Facebook and I'll see posts from people I haven't seen for a year, and I'm like, oh my God, I miss those people so much. And it's been so long now that it's getting upsetting to see their posts, because I miss them so much. Whereas for the first part of the pandemic, that was my way of keeping in touch. It's now almost becoming like, I'm going to have to stop looking, because it's painful. It's painful not to have seen people. Like Sean McGowan, who played here God knows how many times, stayed in my house for 3 months and worked the bar. I haven't seen him for 18 months. And when I see his posts, I'm like, oh, I miss Sean. And it's just things like that. It's just, it's getting harder. It has to come to an end, because it's getting almost too hard to cope with for most people now. I think even people that have handled it well are beginning to get to the end of their, I can't support anybody else through this, because even I've had enough now.
I'm starting to crack a little bit now. And normally, like on a daily, I love staying inside and sitting in the dark and playing the PlayStation, which is the opposite of what Ethan likes doing. So now even I'm getting to the point where being told not to go outside, or that you should stay local, I'm like, I want to jump on a plane, go to some random country in the middle of Africa and just explore, but like can't even go to the co-op without having my own face mask and coughed on by someone.
One thing that surprised me was, I miss gigs with all of my heart. Obviously, I've been doing it for 20 years, but I didn't realize how much I'd miss being really drunk at 2 a.m. and singing Paramore with my friends. Like, I didn't realize how big a part of my life that was.
That is like, peak life, though, isn't it?
To me, that was just something I did after the gig had finished that was fun. But like a few weeks into lockdown, I started to think, I don't know which I'd choose right now. A gig or screaming Paramore lyrics at a disco with my friends. Like and it's
I do the latter or the screaming with your friends, because it's a lot less hard work than organising a gig.
Yeah.
Like some of the best times me and Ethan had, I think the first time we sold out Tiny Rebel when we did the Defeaters show, Ethan sorted out us going to team up, and with these I think, was it Bunker or was it the Brass Bat then, whichever one of the two it was
at the time, yeah.
And Ethan had sorted out this most disgusting Prosecco.
Chambay, it was called.
Yeah, Chambay. And right now, I would do anything for that, and I hated every moment of drinking that shot. That's time.
I also don't drink at home. Like I've never have in my entire life. I've never drunk at home. So until I had my friend over, because we can in Gardens now from last week, I hadn't drunk since the 4th of December. And that is a really long time for me. And I was just like, I really want to get drunk. And the one night I said to Matt, come on, let's do it. We don't drink at home, but let's try it. And we both had like one beer, and I was like, this is pointless. If I can't jump on a stage and scream song lyrics at my friends and then run outside and smoke a cigarette and yell at somebody else down the street that I haven't seen in a whole week, you know, it's
rather than a year, like
it's just weird.
It is nice to see stuff starting to get back to normal. At least the talks of stuff starting to get back to normal. Like I'm starting to notice. I live in Splot in Cardiff, and normally it has the highest rate of infection between people. That gets put out there and everything, but the last sort of 3 weeks to a month, I've noticed people have been behaving themselves a hell of a lot more. Like I like to think that I behave as well as I possibly can. Sometimes, you know, you get a bit carried away, or you accidentally step too close to somebody in the supermarket and stuff. You're not supposed to be doing it, but I'm not one of those people that's out playing football, you know, organising 11-a-side games of football and things. So I have noticed that people have been more courteous to a lot more people, and people have been wearing masks and things like that. Now, it's not normal to wear a mask, let's be honest. I think we're all getting to the point where we're a bit fed up of them.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see people.
Do think they're going to be around for the next few winters, though.
Yeah,
I really do think for the next few winters it's going to be masks. And to a certain extent, I agree with it, because, you know, it's proven to stop people getting the flu, and to stop people getting colds, and to stop people getting COVID. And they don't bother me that much.
No,
so to a certain extent, if it's just in shops, and, you know, maybe when you're at the bar cramped by people, you pop a mask on, I don't really have an issue with that. It's the constant wearing of masks where I have to, you know, wear them all day, every day. That's I mean, there's a lot to be said for some of the things. Like before COVID, we went through 8 bottles of soap in the toilets. And then end of February last year, when all this wash your hands more thing started, it went up to 24. And I start thinking, was nobody fucking washing their hands?
Yeah.
Were you dirty bastards not washing your hands?
Hey, it was in your...
It's buzzing.
And like...
Your clientele, son.
You'd be in the bar or something, and, you know, I've seen it many times, using the urinal, and
people just leave.
He's next to me, he just walks out, like, and you're like...
You see him at the bar downstairs, and you go behind the bar to serve him, and you look at him, and he's like, oh, hey, man, and you're like, I ain't taking
he's
your
shaking
cash
hands
off
with
you,
some
bro.
of them. He's eating his food, like...
So I think if we could learn some lessons about, like, maybe washing our hands more and leaving the sanitizer units by the door. I have no issue with permanently having hand sanitizer around, because it's healthy, it's not dangerous, and it's healthy. So I think we could learn some lessons and come out of it a slightly healthier society, maybe.
Absolutely. And hopefully a smarter one next time we start reading books when we do it again properly.
Yeah. Kill the internet.
Yeah, big reset. Cool. I mean, I want to just talk about gigs all the time, because it's making me really sad but happy at the same time to hear to not speak to someone that isn't either Connor or Ethan about gigs. So like I'm thoroughly enjoying this.
You ask me about any gig you want.
Let's throw a curveball question out there and say, if you could, what would be your dream lineup in Le Pub then? Musically for you, doesn't matter the size of the band or when they're there. What would be the dream? So
they could be bigger.
Yeah, it can be literally anybody. You can have Jimi Hendrix, or you can have Nirvana, or whatever.
I don't know. I really don't know. Jimmy Eat World, always Jimmy Eat World. They are my number one. They'll always be my number one. I can't think of another band that you could put like 10 albums worth on and every song is a banger. My friend from Yorkshire, Helen Chambers, she does acoustic stuff. She's really not that famous at all, but I think she's amazing and wonderful, and I would love her to open for Jimmy Eat World. I'd get Larry and his Flask back from Oregon, because they're amazing. I don't know. I'd probably throw Death Cab for Cutie into the mix.
Nice.
I don't know. I can't think of that without more time.
My first thought was the logistics,
time.
The amount of equipment that would be on that stage from what you described with that Larry and the Flask Band and Jimmy Eat World and Death Cab for Cutie as well. I think we'd need to knock it upstairs and next door and a couple of places down the way as well.
Yeah,
that would be a banger though. That would, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think we'd need to. Let's speak to the guys at 2000 Trees and see if Jimmy Eat World have got a day either side of doing 2000 Trees. And just
I promised myself I'd never see them live again because I saw them do Clarity and Bleed American back to back, start to finish, back to back in London. And it was the most perfect musical experience I've ever had in my entire life. And I left and I said to Matt, I don't ever want to see them again because it won't be that good. But that's a really long time ago now. So I think maybe I would like to see them. But at the time, that resolution lasted for a good year or two because that was just like probably the most perfect thing I've ever seen musically. And it just, don't ever replace that in my memory with something else.
I mean, if they did that in Le Pub, I think it might just
if they wanted to throw in Chase This Light at the end, the whole of Chase This Light track
Jimmy Eat World supporting Jimmy Eat World now. It sounds like this is the sort of
let's just go for Death Cab for Cutie, supporting Jimmy Eat World, supporting Jimmy Eat World.
Nice, that sounds good.
That does sound good.
Oh dear, that was good.
I don't know. No, I think that I love too many bands. I wouldn't want to choose. Like I could never program a festival because I couldn't because I'd book someone and I'd think, oh shit. When I listened to that album, I then listened to that album and now I've just remembered they existed. I need them to play. And it would just end up being like a 5-year thing of like every band I've ever loved.
That doesn't sound bad to me.
No,
I mean, it sounds like the best spreadsheet I'm ever going to see in my life. That's what it sounds like to me. But,
you do like a spreadsheet.
I do love a spreadsheet. The one I did for Loathe. I curated a festival up at the Flapper in Birmingham, a 2-day one, 2 years in a row. And the stress involved in, like you said, picking bands, just literally having a dream lineup for it. I was lucky enough to say that the first 2/3 of everyone that said yes was perfect for it. But then after that, you go, if this band can't do it just because they're not available, I've got 97 other bands I need to just try and pick one band from. And it's a good headache to have. I imagine it's like when you're a football manager and you've got all the best players in the world and you're not sure who to put in. It's not a bad headache to have, but
I'm already thinking of several bands that I've missed, and it starts to screw with my head, and I can't even.
We'll do it like Coachella, where it's like 3 weeks in a row, and it's like basically a separate festival every weekend. That's what we'll get to there for you.
Well,
are there any sort of, let's focus South Wales more now. Are there any South Wales bands that are on your radar that you're a big fan of at the moment that we can talk about?
Panic Shack and Buzzard, obviously the two that's on everybody's radar at the moment. I genuinely love both of those bands. I think my daughter has just started a new band and I think they're great, but no one else has heard them yet, so I don't know what everyone else will think.
But I hope you're not just biased, but I hope they are really good.
But she was in Rose Hip Tea House for a while and she was in a couple of bands before that. You know, she is a really, like, I don't know where she gets it from. It's not me. She gets her passion for live music from me, but definitely not her talent. And they recorded here yesterday, and as I walked home, the songs were in my head and I was like, oh, well, that's a good thing. That's, they've got hooks, and so that's, that'll be great. Chroma, obviously, always Chroma. Absolutely love Chroma. There's a band from Newport called Finding Aurora that they seem to they're kind of classic-y, almost cliche rock, and they seem to fly underneath everybody's radar, but they're really, really good at what they do. So they're always worth checking out.
Amazing.
Nice. That sounds good. I'm kind of like almost daunted. It's like daunting, like when things come back now, like I kind of feel like we were on a roll before, and it was organic. And then when things start up again, it's going to be not forced because they still want to do it, but I think it's going to be weird getting that ball rolling. There's a massive
concern about bands that were at a certain point in their career that COVID may have taken it away from them forever. Because, it put them on a hold at the worst possible time. The ones that were just moving from 100 cap to 250 cap. Are they going to be able to come back, and at what cap? And are people still going to care? Because they weren't big enough for people to be long-term invested, but they were riding a wave towards becoming that. And there's a real concern there around like some bands. And you think, oh God, I really hope they can pick it back up again.
Yeah,
I do think.
Oh, go on.
I do think it's going to have had a massively detrimental effect on some bands' careers long term.
I've been having, like I said, I've been recording a podcast with, lucky enough to speak to a lot of people from around the UK and different parts of the music industry. And like the overwhelming and overriding thought that these people have, at least, is that everything's been sort of put on pause rather than just like stop, end of. For example, like bands doing live streams, bands releasing t-shirts and merchandise and things like that. And radio has done a lot for that, I would say, recently. But like BBC Radio Wales specifically, I know I've got a lot of friends who have had their music featured on there.
Yeah, Adam Walton is an amazing ambassador for Welsh music. I think we're really, really lucky to have someone as passionate as Adam, like in our scene.
And I feel rare. Like, I mean, obviously, like podcasts have become the thing, and this type of thing that we're doing now, and live streams for bands have become the thing. But radio was almost like always the thing. It's just now people are taking even more notice of it. I've been like, if Chroma got a track on BBC Radio Wales, for example, like introducing bands, sometimes when you get put on there, you think, oh, that's cool, and introducing. Now it's like you shout it from the rooftops because you realize there's another 5, 6, 7,000 people listening in to those shows because they're at home cooking their dinner at home because they're actually at home at a reasonable hour.
And people that you can't access any other way anymore because they're not going to come to a gig and accidentally catch you.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at Campfire Social from Wrexham Way, they were supposed to be playing South by Southwest last year, and they'd just come off the Bell and Sebastian boat tour, and they are genuinely like, they're my friends, and they're not a very big band, but they are one of my favorite bands musically. Like, I think they're absolutely phenomenal, and I really worry that, like, they're amazing, and I'm so much confidence in them to come back, but the damage that is done and how hard it is gonna be for them to get that impetus back is so worrying. And I think that's going to be happening to a lot of bands around that size.
We might need a lot of labels to step up. Now, obviously, labels have been hit as well because, you release a record, releasing a vinyl, a 12-inch, costs a lot of money, regardless of how many like that you do. So if you're releasing 300, it can still cost upwards of £1,000. If you're not selling them, because the main thing would be to give a band, 150 of them and expect them to sell them at shows as it goes along, they're not able to do that. But if labels and management or A&R and stuff can step up, because they're in the same position, they've got to know if they step up.
What we need to step up are the major labels. They need to understand that grassroots music venues and grassroots bands and the very, very beginnings of being at the beginning of your musical career, without that, in 5 years, they won't have anyone to sign.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this massive short-sightedness from the label where they're like, oh, well, we're all right. Most of the major labels are kind of like, well, we're all right. We're still selling Elton John records. And they need to step up and put some money into grassroots music and bands of a smaller size. Otherwise, they will have no one to put out in 5 years.
So also going back to the football analogy I sort of brought up earlier, it's the same thing there, where there's a massive campaign for quite literally grassroots football, where I think it's Premier League teams have to give 1% of something, and then that changes kids' lives playing football. It changes Sunday League. It changes all that. Like Sony and Virgin and all these. I mean, they do need their money. I was about to say they don't need their money. They do need their money because they're still in business, but they don't need to pay Simon Cowell £1 billion a year.
But the thing is, this happens in Europe. In Europe, they have, the major labels pay towards the grassroots music circuit. And Music Venue Trust have been trying to put this together for about 2 years now, and we're kind of slowly getting somewhere. The Pipeline Investment Fund, where 5% of tickets to arenas comes into a fund that is distributed to grassroots music venues and artists.
So then you have those bands playing the arenas in 5 years' time.
Yeah,
because they've got the opportunity to play.
We're just going to end up with fucking Coldplay headlining everything for the rest of our lives. And
is it me or is Chris Martin
I'm not about that.
Say that again, Rich.
I say, is it me or Chris Martin hasn't aged either from
the
first time you saw him on the telly? I'm pretty sure he's just. I don't know what Gwyneth Paltrow's done to him, but
I'll tell you who else hasn't aged is Jared Leto. He's a fucking vampire. I can look at pictures of him 15 years apart, and I've got no clue which one was taken yesterday and which was taken 15 years ago. And people like that freak me out.
That's how I kind of feel about Ethan, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Just always going to be young and handsome.
But yeah, no, I think there is a massive short-sightedness from the major labels and the major arenas about the fact that without us, there will be nothing for them to book and put out soon.
I remember I'm from Birmingham, so don't really say that often because it's not really something to be proud of.
I'm from Tamworth.
Oh yes, represent West Midlands. I used to go to the NEC a lot, obviously, because it was the biggest place to go to. And I remember the last year or so I was living there. I moved to Cardiff about 5 years ago. They would have local bands playing in the foyer when there were big arena bands. So it wasn't a support slot by any stretch of the imagination, but like
But it was exposure.
I had a friend who once, quote unquote, supported Beyonce by playing to Beyonce's fans before Beyonce played.
That's brilliant. We need to see more of that kind of thing.
I know
Definitely.
the Motorpoint did do, I know that's obviously the only arena really that I can sort of talk about in South Wales. I know there's going to be the one in the Bay. Who knows what that's sort of going to happen. But they did do some things in the foyer there, but it's not as exposed. It's not as much exposure out to getting people to turn up to watch like a local metal band supporting when Slipknot play, for example.
Yeah.
Things like that would be monumental for a lot of bands. And career defining. But even at the same way, like I know it's me and Ethan do 100, 200 cap shows max, but us working with something like Team Up after a show that we've done gives people the opportunity to go, oh, right, so I can work with these guys and these guys and these guys, and then my career can sort of go off.
Yeah, we really do. Like, I think South Wales we are pretty interconnected and we do all work really well together. But I think we could still be doing more. There is still more that could be done. And I think, I mean, we don't really have any big evil corporations operating in South Wales that are coming along and stealing all the business.
That we know of. That's what it is.
It's more insidious.
I think we need to capitalize on that and like build the community and like the foundations, build them even stronger and just get people talking to each other more. Because I know Orchard actually put a penny tax on the tickets they released last summer and sent all the money to Music Venue Trust, which is brilliant because, you know, they're selling out like Ollie Murs wherever he was playing. I don't know, the stadium or where. I have no idea where Ollie Murs plays. He could play to 500 people or 10,000. I have no idea how big the man is.
Unfortunately, I think it might be 10,000 people.
But like they put like almost a penny tax. It was voluntary, you know. Do you want to round up and give the money to Music Venue Trust? And that was an amazing gesture that was hugely appreciated, not just for the money it raised, but just because it shows that those people are considering grassroots music venues. Because for a long time, without the advocacy of Music Venue Trust, we were the shitholes, we were the toilet circuit, we were that shit pub down the road that sometimes put gigs on. And the most important thing, again, along with the solidarity, they've done too many important things, I can't even pin it down, but Music Venue Trust have created a sector. They've taken a load of individual pubs that people didn't really have any respect for and created a sector called the grassroots music venue. I mean, that term didn't exist 5 years ago. We were the toilet circuit. Music Venue Trust literally coined that phrase.
I still love that phrase, mind, solely because when I used to do shows at the Flapper, the venue was literally next door to the toilet, so I felt like quite an affliction and everything. But
the Forum in Tunbridge Wells used to be toilets.
See, it makes sense for people like us who get it. Like, I think it's kind of like an endearing thing. But if you say to people, I'm going to play in a toilet venue, if I said that to my mum, she'd be like, what?
I think,
why are you doing that?
The term grassroots music venue, last count, had been mentioned in the Houses of Parliament 9 times now. And it's a phrase we only coined 4 years ago. And that's just like an amazing achievement. But that is because the sector was already there operating strongly. But it needed some organization to say, you lot are all fucking brilliant. Can you please just talk to each other? Oh, okay, brilliant.
Just before we wrap it up, because I get close to the time, 9 o'clock now. So my day job, for lack of a better phrase, is I sell tickets online for a ticketing company based in South Wales. And we work with theatres and we work with live music venues. And basically anybody that does anything that needs a ticket somewhere, we sell tickets for. But I've noticed recently there's been a hell of a lot of people making donations as well as buying tickets to things. Now, it got me thinking when I saw that I could quite easily call up one of these. We don't make any money from the donations, obviously, as the company. We just give customers options to do it. Calling up those companies and talking about Kickstarters and talking about Patreons and, you know, the things that venues then, you know, you've got the studio downstairs. You could have a Patreon, for example, it's £5 a month and you get extra intro stuff from the podcast and all that type of stuff. Is that something you think Le Pub might be able to continue in because people support the venue regardless whether there's a gig on or whether it's open or not?
I think, and this is what it's going to come down to, is a lot of the things like the podcast and maybe a Patreon and all of those things, they're really difficult to run alongside running a pub.
Yeah,
because running a pub is a lot of work.
Yeah,
So
it is.
Ethan can say that now.
Yeah, you'd have to monetize the Patreon or whatever it was else you were doing to the point that it could pay for the staff hours
to get it
if
done,
nothing else, to get it done. Otherwise, these things start costing you money and costing you time.
Yeah.
And then you've lost, like, you didn't do your bloody beer order because you were too busy doing this, and then oh crap, I've got to ring up and beg for a beer order because I'm 10 minutes after the deadline. And it's really going to be a really interesting journey back to normality to see which things we can keep up with and which things we're going to have to be like, that was great during the pandemic, but we didn't make any money from it, and unfortunately we don't have the time now. I mean, the podcast's amazing. Ben, who does the podcast, he does it for free because he absolutely loves it, so the podcast will be fine. But in terms of like creating extra content and all of that, I couldn't ask him to do that for free because that's not fair. Like, he's doing the podcast for free from home, but to then say to him, right, I need you to come in and do your 4 assistant manager shifts a week and then go home and do the podcast and do the extra content. You know, it's all about trying to get the normality and the things we've done during COVID to meld. And it's going to be interesting.
Mic him up on a shift and just record that for an episode of the podcast and see how that goes.
He did the first one with me just as a test, and it's so boring. It's like an hour and a half of me, and it's the most boring thing in the world. And
I love podcasts and stuff. I mean, I know, like I said earlier, podcasts are the thing, and I do have my own one now, as well as I sort of kind of class this as bit of a live podcast, I guess, without the whole Apple logo and stuff attached to the side of it. But I love that long form style of storytelling and things because it's a bit more adaptive. Like the conversations we had from like the first second we started to how we got now, you don't really get that with, I mean, reading an article or something in a magazine. I do like it that way. But I mean, the podcast is doing really, really well for you guys, isn't it? I know you've got Daniel Minty on this week, right?
We've got some really exciting things coming up as well. I don't know, amazing. Ben's just told me they're really exciting, yet he's not telling me who, because he knows how excited I'll be, and he knows I'll start shouting my mouth off all over the internet.
I'm finding it really hard with my one to not tell people who I've spoken to, because I'll sit and like have 7, 8, 9 episodes recorded, and the only person who knows is my fiance. And even then, like, she's not really necessarily into the music that me and Ethan are into, the people that are on. So it wouldn't even matter if I did tell her. She'd go, "Oh, okay, yeah. So that's what you were doing for 3 hours. Cool."
Yeah. I'm not allowed. He's got 2 guests coming up. I don't even know who they are. I'm not allowed.
It's me and Ethan.
Oh, yay! I'm up for that. That sounds great. Yeah, we'll get you guys on our podcast next.
We would love that. Cool. I think we'll wrap up now. We're coming up to an hour and it's just gone 9 o'clock now, and I appreciate you might. I mean, I've got dinner to go and eat. I'm always the way. I've just got terrible timekeeping, basically.
I've got nothing to do.
I think
hide a beer, pour yourself a beer and hide it under the bar.
I'm going to go and watch Your Honor. I think I'm going to walk home and watch the rest of Your Honor. I've really nearly finished and I'm loving it.
Nice.
That sounds good. Nice. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Really, no problem at all.
We will try and reschedule the gig that we had booked in last April at some point. But yeah,
at some point
we'll get our people to call your people. What was really sad for me personally about us having to cancel that show was my friend Ben Fitzharris, who used to work for you.
New Boy Ben.
That show, New Boy Ben.
New Boy Ben. He'd been there for 2 years, and he still became even like I think we had 6 staff that had started after him, and he was still New Boy Ben.
See, he organised the show down the tour that me and my band and Ben's band played together at the old pub and everything, and I was like, this is going to be real nice, like wrap up after 3 years after that show and 5 years having lived in Cardiff. We're going to like finally go back to square one, but it will happen, and we will make sure.
It will.
Yeah,
wicked.
Sam, thank you so much again.
So much.
For your
no worries at all.
Lovely.